The engineering section had become a nightmare of heat and noise. Deho and his team worked around the reactor core, modifying systems that were never meant to be changed. They removed safety limiters and rerouted power conduits with shaking hands. One wrong connection could cause a meltdown. One miscalculation could kill everyone on the ship instantly. But Deho didn't think about that. He thought about Mirai and the life they were supposed to build together. He thought about the 12 billion people trusting him to save them. On the bridge, the battle continued with brutal intensity. The 10 remaining alien warships pressed their attack relentlessly. The Worldship's shields were failing section by section, showing red across Somin's displays. She managed the defensive grid like a conductor leading an orchestra, directing fire where it would do the most good. Every alien ship that got too close paid the price in damaged hull plating and destroyed weapons. But the humans were losing ground inch by inch. Nari guided the Worldship through the asteroid field with movements born from equal parts skill and desperation. She used the massive rocks as weapons, positioning the ship so that alien fire sometimes struck asteroids instead of shields. The impact sent debris flying in all directions, creating additional hazards. 2 alien ships collided with large rocks while trying to maintain formation, suffering damage that forced them to pull back temporarily. Mirai worked on the loading teams despite her exhaustion. Her hands were raw from carrying ammunition crates. Her body ached from running through cold corridors. But she refused to stop. Every railgun round she delivered gave the ship another chance to survive. Around her, other civilians pushed themselves beyond their limits. Old people worked beside young ones. Scientists carried ammunition alongside teachers and farmers. Humanity had become one organism fighting for survival. Commander Thelvin watched the battle from his command center with growing frustration. The humans should have broken by now. Their shields should have failed completely, but somehow they kept fighting. Every time his ships damaged one section, the humans compensated with another. It was like fighting a creature that refused to die no matter how many wounds it received. His communications officer reported that Council headquarters was demanding status updates. Other commanders were questioning his tactics. The political pressure was becoming unbearable. Jisoo organized shelter rotations, making sure people rested, even as the battle raged. Children needed to sleep despite the fear. The elderly needed medical attention. Injured defenders needed treatment and sometimes just someone to hold their hand. She moved through the shelters with calm determination, helping where she could. When people asked if they would survive, she told them yes without hesitation. She had to believe it. The alternative was unthinkable. Taejin continued monitoring alien communications, feeding information to Jinwoo. Some alien captains were arguing that they should withdraw and request reinforcements. Others insisted they were close to victory. Thelvin overruled all dissent and ordered the attack to continue. The commander had become obsessed with winning, unable to accept that primitives had bested him repeatedly. That obsession would be his downfall. In engineering, Kiwan connected the final power conduit while sweat poured down his face. The reactor modification was nearly complete. The core hummed with barely contained energy, operating at levels that made all the safety systems scream warnings. Taeho silenced the alarms and ran the final calculations. The weapon would work. It had to work. He sent a message to the bridge. They needed 20 more minutes. Jinwoo received the message and looked at his tactical display. 20 minutes felt like forever. The shields were at 15% capacity and dropping. Alien weapons hammered the hull directly in some sections, venting atmosphere and causing casualties. Medical teams were overwhelmed with injured crew members. He opened a channel to the entire ship and told everyone to hold on just a little longer. Help was coming. An alien warship broke through the defensive line and approached the Worldship at close range. Its captain intended to board the human vessel and take the reactor by force. Assault pods launched from the alien ship, crossing the distance in seconds. They attached to the hull and began cutting through the outer plating with energy torches. Somin saw the boarding attempt and redeployed security teams to the breach points. Firefights erupted in corridors as aliens in combat armor encountered humans with improvised weapons. The defenders were outnumbered but fought with savage determination. They knew every meter the aliens advanced brought them closer to the reactor. Somin led one of the teams personally, firing her weapon with cold precision. The alien boarders were trained soldiers, but they hadn't expected such fierce resistance. Humans used the narrow corridors to their advantage, creating choke points where superior numbers meant nothing. They rigged explosive traps and ambushes. They fought with a fury the aliens couldn't match because they were defending their only home. The boarding attempt stalled, then collapsed as the human defenders pushed back. Deho activated the weapon system with hands that no longer shook. The fear had burned away, replaced by focus and purpose. The reactor core began the power transfer, channeling unimaginable energy into the modified beam emitter they had constructed. Temperature warnings filled his screens, but he ignored them. Everything was committed now. They would fire the weapon or die trying. On the bridge, Jinwoo opened one final communication channel to the alien fleet. He spoke to Commander Thelvin directly, offering one last chance to withdraw. The humans had no desire to kill anyone. They just wanted to continue their journey in peace. They would defend themselves if forced to, but mercy was still possible. Surrender the attack and both sides could walk away. Thelvin's response was filled with contempt and rage. He called humans ignorant vermin clinging to stolen technology. He promised that the Council would hunt them across the galaxy. There would be no peace, no mercy, no escape. The Worldship and everyone on it would be destroyed or enslaved. Those were the only options primitives like them deserved. Jinwoo felt something break inside him at those words. He had tried to be reasonable. He had offered alternatives to violence. The aliens had refused every chance at peace. They had attacked refugees who posed no threat. They had targeted civilian areas deliberately. They had boarded his ship and tried to murder his crew. Now there was only one response left. He gave Deho the authorization to fire. The reactor weapon discharged with a sound that resonated through the entire Worldship. A beam of pure fusion energy, impossibly bright and perfectly focused, erupted from the emitter array. It crossed the distance to Thelvin's flagship in a fraction of a second. The alien shields tried to form but couldn't handle the massive energy concentration. The beam punched through the warship like it was made of paper. The flagship exploded from the inside out, its reactor losing containment. The explosion was visible throughout the star system, a miniature sun blooming and dying in moments. Thelvin and his entire command crew died instantly, never understanding how completely they had misjudged their opponents. The beam continued past the destroyed flagship and struck a second warship, crippling it beyond repair before finally dissipating. The remaining alien ships froze in shock. They had watched their commander and 2 additional vessels destroyed by a single shot from the primitive humans. Fear replaced aggression in their calculations. These weren't easy prey. These were dangerous survivors who would fight to the last breath. The alien captains made the logical choice. They turned and retreated at maximum speed, abandoning the battle. On the eternal horizon, cheers erupted throughout the ship. People who had been certain they would die suddenly realized they would live. Defenders hugged each other and cried with relief. In the shelters, families held their children close and gave thanks to whatever gods they believed in. The battle was over. They had survived. Deho collapsed against his console, completely exhausted. The reactor weapon had worked, but the cost was severe. The core was damaged and operating at minimal capacity. It would take weeks to repair, maybe months. They would be vulnerable during that time. But they were alive to face those challenges. Kiwon helped him to his feet, both of them grinning despite their exhaustion. Mirai received word that Deho was safe and finally allowed herself to cry. She sat among the ruins of her agricultural dome and let the tears flow. They were tears of grief for what was lost and tears of joy for what remained. Eventually, she stood up and began planning how to rebuild. There was work to do, and she had never been afraid of work. Jinwoo received a transmission from an unexpected source, a different faction within the Galactic Council, one that had opposed the attack from the beginning. They had monitored the entire battle and were horrified by Thelvin's actions. They offered assistance, medical supplies, and most importantly, safe passage through Council space. Not all aliens were enemies. Some understood that strength came in many forms. The captain accepted the offer cautiously. Trust would take time to build, but it was a beginning. He looked around his bridge at the crew who had saved their people through courage and ingenuity. Soman was organizing repair teams. Hyunwoo was plotting a course to their destination world. The asteroid belt stretched in all directions, a field of ancient rock tumbling through space around a star that had burned out millions of years ago. The eternal horizon sat among the largest asteroids, its hull scarred from the journey but still intact. On the bridge, Captain Jinwoo watched the alien fleet approach with a calm expression that hid his racing thoughts. 12 warships entered the belt in formation, their shields glowing as smaller rocks bounced harmlessly off their hulls. They moved with military precision, spreading out to surround the Worldship from multiple angles. Commander Thelvin broadcast one final message: surrender now and the humans would be allowed to live as subjects of the Galactic Council. Refuse and the Worldship would be destroyed with everyone aboard. Jinwoo's response was brief. Humanity had traveled too far and sacrificed too much to become slaves. They had built the eternal horizon to carry them to freedom. That dream would not die here. The communication channel closed. Both sides knew what came next. The alien warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and plasma bolts streaked across the distance, lighting up space with deadly colors. The Worldship's shields flared bright as they absorbed impact after impact. Soman's defensive grid responded instantly. Thousands of railguns tracked the alien ships and fired, filling space between them with streams of metal projectiles moving at incredible speeds. Nari worked her controls with sweating hands, adjusting the Worldship's position, using the maneuvering thrusters. She used the asteroids as shields, moving the massive vessel behind rock formations when the alien fire became too concentrated. It was like dancing with a mountain, every movement calculated and precise. One mistake would leave them exposed to weapons that could crack the hull like an egg. Daeho watched his reactor displays with growing concern. The power drain from the shields and weapons was enormous. They couldn't maintain this level of output for more than an hour before critical systems began failing. He rerouted power from everywhere he could, shutting down entire decks to feed energy to the weapons. People would freeze in those sections, but freezing was better than dying in an explosion. One of the alien warships broke formation and tried to flank the Worldship from below. Its captain thought he saw an opening, a section where the human defenses looked weaker. He pushed his engines to maximum, diving under a large asteroid to approach from an unexpected angle. It was a fatal mistake. Daeho had reprogrammed dozens of mining drones while they waited for the battle to begin. These drones were designed to attach to asteroids and use small explosives to break off chunks of valuable minerals. Now they had a different purpose. As the alien ship passed beneath the asteroid, the drones activated. They triggered their charges in a precise sequence, destabilizing the massive rock's trajectory. The asteroid shifted, its immense mass beginning to tumble. The alien captain realized his error too late. He tried to reverse course, but momentum and gravity had already decided his fate. The asteroid crashed into his warship with the force of a planet killer. The vessel crumpled like paper, its shields overloading instantly. Debris scattered across the belt, adding to the chaos. The remaining 11 alien ships pulled back slightly, their captains suddenly more cautious. Thelvin screamed orders over the communication channels, demanding they press the attack. The humans were wounded and desperate. Now was the time to finish them. But his captains had seen 2 of their number destroyed by primitive tactics and crude weapons. Pride warred with survival instinct. In the agricultural section, Mirai led her team through corridors where frost formed on the walls from Daeho's power shutdowns. They carried ammunition crates toward the railgun loading stations, civilian volunteers doing military work because every hand was needed. The crates were heavy and the journey long, but no one complained. Children they had taught to grow vegetables watched from sheltered doorways, and the adults would die before letting those children down. Kiwan discovered something important while analyzing the alien ship energy signatures. The shields on the warships operated at a specific frequency to maximize their efficiency. If the human weapons could match that frequency exactly, it might create a resonance effect. The shields would vibrate at a harmonic level they weren't designed to handle. It could overload their generators. He took his findings to Daeho. The chief engineer looked at Kiwan's calculations and saw the possibility. It would require synchronizing every railgun on the Worldship to fire at exactly the same moment, all targeting the same alien ship. The timing had to be perfect down to milliseconds. One gun firing early or late would break the resonance and waste the attempt. It was incredibly difficult. It was also their best chance at evening the odds. Daeho brought the idea to Soman. The security chief studied the math and smiled grimly. She could do it. Her weapon systems were networked and computer-controlled. She just needed a target. They chose the closest alien warship, one that had been particularly aggressive in its attacks. Soman programmed the firing solution and prepared to give the order. The alien ship moved closer. its captain eager to prove his courage to Commander Thelvin. His weapons officer reported that the human shields were weakening in several sections. They could punch through with sustained fire. The captain ordered all weapons to concentrate on one area of the Worldship's hull. This battle would end soon. Salmon watched the alien ship position itself perfectly. She whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her as a child, words from Earth about strength and protection. Then she initiated the synchronized firing sequence. Every railgun on the eternal horizon adjusted its aim by fractions of degrees. Capacitors charged. Targeting computers confirmed their locks. The guns fired as one. Thousands of metal projectiles hit the alien warship's shield at the exact same instant, all vibrating at the precise frequency Kiwan had calculated. The shield generator tried to compensate, cycling through its normal responses. But the resonance was too perfect. The harmonics built upon themselves, creating feedback loops the system couldn't handle. The generator overloaded with a flash of light visible across the entire asteroid belt. The alien ship's shield collapsed completely. Before the captain could react, the next wave of railgun fire struck bare hull. Metal tore through metal, puncturing critical systems. The reactor containment failed, and the warship exploded from within. Debris rained across nearby asteroids, a funeral pyre for hundreds of alien crew members who had underestimated human desperation. 10 warships remained. Thelvin felt his confidence crack. The humans had destroyed 3 of his vessels using inferior technology and clever tactics. The other council commanders were watching this battle, judging his performance. If he lost here, his career and possibly his life were finished. But if he pulled back now, he would be marked a coward. He ordered his ships to target the Worldship's agricultural sections. If they couldn't have the reactor intact, they would starve the humans into eventual submission. Jinwoo watched the alien ships change their targeting patterns. He understood Thelvin's strategy immediately. The agricultural domes were less protected than engineering or the reactor chamber. They could be destroyed more easily. Without food production, the 12 billion people on the Worldship would slowly die. The captain felt rage burn through his chest, hot and clean. The aliens weren't just trying to steal technology anymore. They were trying to commit genocide. Solomon saw the same thing and came to a dark realization. Diplomacy was dead. Mercy was a luxury they couldn't afford. This battle would end with either humanity surviving or humanity extinct. There was no middle ground anymore. She looked at Jinwoo and saw the same understanding in his eyes. He gave her a small nod. Whatever needed to be done, she had permission to do it. Mirei's section took a direct hit. The dome she had tended for 15 years cracked open, venting atmosphere and plants into space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, saving the people but losing months of crops. She felt tears freeze on her cheeks as her life's work died. But she was alive, and that meant she could rebuild. She picked up another ammunition crate and kept moving. The aliens would pay for what they had destroyed. Tajin intercepted communications showing other council species questioning the attack. Some of them had seen the images he had broadcast earlier, showing human families and children aboard the Worldship. They were uncomfortable with Thelvin's methods. But they weren't uncomfortable enough to order him to stop. Politics and military power still mattered more than morality. Daeho came to the bridge with a proposal that made everyone go silent. The reactor could be modified to create a directed energy weapon. It had never been done before, and would drain their power reserves completely for weeks. Worse, it might cause permanent damage to the reactor core. They would be defenseless and drifting afterward. But the weapon would be powerful enough to destroy any ship it hit. One shot to end the battle decisively. Jinwoo asked how long the modification would take. Daeho said 6 hours minimum. The captain looked at his tactical display. They could hold out for 6 hours. Barely. He gave the authorization. Daeho ran back to engineering, already calling out orders to his team. Kiwan and others scrambled to help, knowing they were building something that would either save them all or kill them all. The nebula loomed ahead like a wall of colored mist, beautiful and terrifying. Purple and blue gases swirled in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Radiation warnings flashed across every sensor display on the Eternal Horizons bridge. Captain Jinwoo knew this was a desperate gamble, but desperate was all they had left. Yunwoo reported that the alien fleet was now just 30 minutes behind them. 12 warships in pursuit, with more joining every hour. The Galactic Council had committed serious resources to stopping them. Jinwoo wondered if they would have sent this many ships if humans had simply agreed to hand over the reactor technology. Probably not. But surrender had never been an option. Humanity had run from a dying Earth, and they would keep running until they found a new home or died trying. Nari guided the Worldship into the nebula's outer edges. Immediately, the sensor displays began showing false readings. The radiation played havoc with their instruments, creating ghost images and phantom contacts. If the human sensors were struggling, the alien ships would have the same problems. That was the hope, anyway. The Worldship pushed deeper into the thick gas clouds, disappearing from normal space like a submarine diving underwater. Daiho worked in engineering, surrounded by warning lights and alarm sounds. The shields were taking a beating from the radiation. Every time a high-energy particle struck the hull, it drained a little more power from their already stressed systems. He diverted energy from non-essential areas to keep the shield strong. Lights dimmed throughout the ship. Temperature control shut down in some sections. Comfort no longer mattered. Only survival mattered. Commander Thelvin stared at his tactical display with growing frustration. The human Worldship had vanished into the nebula like it had never existed. His sensor officer reported that finding them would be difficult, perhaps impossible in these conditions. The commander ordered the fleet to split up and search in a pattern. Each warship would take a different section of the nebula. Someone would find the humans eventually. Somin monitored the alien communications from her station, listening to Taijin's translations. The aliens were spreading out, which was exactly what she hoped they would do. Together, 12 warships were overwhelming. Separated, they were vulnerable. She proposed an idea to Jinwoo that made him pause. What if they didn't just hide? What if they hunted? The Worldship had maintenance drones, thousands of them. Small robotic units designed to repair hull damage and service external systems. Somin suggested modifying them with explosive charges from the emergency supplies. Turn them into weapons. When an alien ship got close enough, release a swarm of explosive drones and cripple it before it could call for help. It was brutal, but these aliens had fired first. They had made this a fight. Jinwoo approved the plan. Somin sent orders to maintenance crews throughout the ship. Engineers who had never considered themselves soldiers began attaching explosive charges to drones. They worked quickly, knowing that every minute counted. Jisoo helped coordinate the civilian volunteers, people who wanted to do something, anything, to protect their home. Deep in the agricultural section, Mirai finally received a message from Daiho. He was alive and working hard to keep the ship running. She felt relief flood through her body. She had been terrified that something had happened to him during the reactor overload. He told her to stay in the shelter and promised they would see each other when this was over. She wanted to believe him. The first alien scout ship entered their section of the nebula, scanning methodically. Its captain was young and eager to prove himself to Commander Thelvin. He pushed his ship deeper into the gas clouds than the other searchers, determined to be the one who found the humans. His sensors picked up a faint energy signature ahead. He increased speed, following the reading. On the eternal horizon, Somin watched the alien ship approach. It was smaller than the warships they had seen before, a scout vessel with lighter weapons and shields. Perfect. She waited until it was close enough, then gave the order. External hatches opened across a section of hull. Maintenance drones poured out in a coordinated swarm, thousands of small machines moving with mechanical precision. The alien captain saw them coming too late. His weapons officer tried to target the drones, but there were too many, and they moved erratically. Energy beams destroyed dozens of drones, but hundreds more kept coming. They attached themselves to the alien hull like parasites, clustering around engine sections and weapon ports. Then they exploded simultaneously. The alien ship shuddered from multiple impacts. Hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. The engines sputtered and failed. Weapon systems went offline. The captain sent a desperate distress call, but the nebula's radiation scattered the signal. Other alien ships would receive fragments of the message, not enough to understand what had happened or where. The scout ship drifted helplessly as the eternal horizon moved away, disappearing back into the nebula's depths. Thelvin received the broken distress signal and realized his mistake. The humans weren't hiding. They were fighting back. He had underestimated them repeatedly, and it was costing him ships and reputation. The other council members would hear about this failure. His career might not survive this humiliation unless he caught the humans soon. He ordered the fleet to regroup immediately. No more individual searches. They would sweep through the nebula together. Taejin intercepted the regroup order and informed Jinwoo. The captain nodded slowly, processing the information. The aliens were getting smarter. Staying in the nebula would only delay the inevitable. They needed a better defensive position, somewhere they could make a real stand if necessary. He asked Hyunwoo about stellar features beyond the nebula. The navigation officer found what they needed. An asteroid belt orbited a dead star just outside the nebula's far edge. The asteroids were large and numerous, creating a chaotic environment where maneuvering would be difficult. The alien ships would have to engage at close range if they wanted to fight there. Close range meant the Worldship's defensive weapons would be more effective. It was risky, but everything was risky now. Nari plotted a course through the nebula toward the asteroid belt. The journey would take 3 hours at their current speed. 3 hours to prepare for what might be their final battle. Jinwoo addressed the entire Worldship population over the communication system. He told them the truth about what was coming. 12 billion people deserved to know. He also told them that humanity had survived the death of their homeworld. They had crossed the galaxy together. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Throughout the ship, people responded to his words in different ways. Some prayed to gods their ancestors had brought from Earth. Others held their families close and whispered reassurances. Engineers checked their systems one more time. Security teams inventoried weapons and ammunition. Medical staff prepared emergency treatment centers for casualties they hoped wouldn't come. Ki-won, a junior engineer barely 20 years old, worked alongside Daeho in the reactor chamber. He had been born on the Worldship and grown up hearing stories about humanity's ingenuity and determination. Now he would learn if those stories were true. He asked Daeho if they were going to survive this. Daeho didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were simple. They would survive if everyone did their job and refused to give up. That was all humanity had ever needed. The eternal horizon emerged from the nebula into the star system containing the asteroid belt. The massive Worldship moved among rocks the size of mountains, its shields deflecting smaller debris. Nari positioned them carefully, using the largest asteroids as cover and creating fields of fire where their weapons would have the best angles. This was their ground now. This was where they would make the aliens regret coming after them. Soman activated every defensive system the Worldship possessed. Railguns powered up along the entire hull. Point defense systems came online. Missile tubes loaded their few remaining warheads. The eternal horizon transformed from a peaceful refugee vessel into a fortress, bristling with weapons that had been installed 70 years ago by designers who hoped they would never be needed. The alien fleet regrouped at the nebula's edge and detected the Worldship's new position. Commander Thelvin studied the tactical situation and felt a predator's satisfaction. The humans had backed themselves into a corner. The asteroid belt would make maneuvering difficult for everyone, but he had 12 warships against one Worldship. Numbers would decide this battle. He gave the order to advance, and the fleet moved forward to claim their prize. The monitoring station floated in the darkness between galaxies, a small outpost where nothing ever happened. Vexthar had worked the sensor console for 15 years, watching empty space display the same readings day after day. His 3 eyes were half closed with boredom when the alarm screamed to life. The screen showed something impossible. A massive object was moving through the void at incredible speed. Vexthar's claws trembled as he ran the scan again. The readings stayed the same. The object was enormous, larger than any moon he had ever seen. It was artificial. Someone had built this thing. He sent an emergency signal to the Galactic Council headquarters. Within minutes, military ships were changing course to investigate. Commander Thelvin himself took command of the operation. The commander was known throughout Council space as a warrior who never failed to claim what he wanted. The object became clearer as more sensors locked onto it. The Council's best scientists studied the data with growing excitement. They called it a Worldship, a vessel designed to carry an entire civilization across the stars. The power readings from its core were unlike anything in Council records. Whatever technology drove this ship could change everything. Thelvin studied the holographic display in his command center. The Worldship was beautiful in a crude way, covered in lights and structures that housed billions of living beings. His tactical officer identified the species through their broadcasts, humans, a name that meant nothing to anyone in the Council. They had no records of this species, no diplomatic contact, nothing. These humans were completely unknown. The commander learned that humans came from a dying planet called Earth. They had built this worldship as their last hope for survival. For 3 generations, 12 billion humans had lived inside this vessel. Traveling toward a distant world, they hoped to make their new home. They were refugees with nowhere else to go. What interested Thelvin most was the reactor. The humans had developed a fusion cascade system that generated more power than should be possible. The Council's energy crisis could be solved with this technology. Thousands of worlds struggled with power shortages. This reactor could save them all. The commander made his decision quickly. The humans would surrender their technology. They had no choice. Far away on the eternal horizon, Deho walked through the engineering section with a satisfied smile. The massive reactor hummed smoothly, all systems showing green on his displays. He had been born on this ship, as had his parents. The Worldship was the only home he had ever known. Earth was just a story from history lessons, a place his great-grandparents had left behind. His communication device buzzed. It was Mirai, his partner, calling from the agricultural domes. Her voice was cheerful as always. She told him about the new crop yields, better than projected. The hydroponic systems were working perfectly. 12 billion people needed to eat, and her team made sure the food never stopped growing. Deho told her he would visit after his shift ended. They had a quiet life together, peaceful and predictable. Captain Jinwoo sat in his command chair on the bridge reviewing navigation reports. The Eternal Horizon had been traveling for 70 years. Another 30 years would pass before they reached their destination planet. He was the 5th captain in the Worldship's history. The responsibility of keeping 12 billion souls safe weighed on him every day, but he had good people around him. Navigation Officer Hun Woo approached with a concerned expression. Long-range sensors had detected multiple vessels matching their course and speed. The signals were artificial, definitely ships of some kind. Jinwoo ordered him to send standard greeting messages on all frequencies. First contact with alien life was something humans had dreamed about for centuries. This should be a moment of celebration. No response came. The alien ships continued to close the distance. Jinwoo called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. Security Chief Somin arrived first, already wearing her combat gear. She never trusted anything that didn't announce itself properly. Yunwoo brought detailed sensor data showing 3 massive warships, each larger than any human vessel ever built. They studied the alien ships in silence. The designs were strange, built with technologies humans didn't understand. The power signatures suggested weapons that could tear the Eternal Horizon apart. Somin wanted to activate defensive systems immediately. Jinwoo held off, hoping diplomacy would work. They were refugees, not warriors. Fighting was the last thing they wanted. The alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly ahead of the Worldship. 3 enormous warships formed a blockade, their hulls covered in what looked like weapon ports. Jinwoo stood from his chair and straightened his uniform. This was it. First contact with an alien civilization. He ordered all crew to remain calm and await instructions. A transmission came through. The universal translator struggled with the alien language at first, then produced words everyone could understand. Commander Thelvin's voice was cold and demanding. The humans would stop their ship immediately. They would surrender their fusion reactor technology for examination. They would allow boarding parties to secure all technical data. Resistance would not be tolerated. Jinwoo felt his jaw tighten. These aliens weren't interested in friendship or peaceful contact. They wanted to take what humanity had built. He composed himself and responded carefully. Humanity was passing through this region peacefully. They had no hostile intentions. They would be happy to share scientific information and establish friendly relations. The Worldship would continue on its journey. Thelvin's laughter crackled through the speakers. The commander said humans were primitives who didn't understand the value of what they possessed. The technology belonged in civilized hands. The Galactic Council would take custody of the reactor for the greater good. The humans should be grateful they wouldn't simply destroy the Worldship and take what they wanted from the debris. Warning shots fired from the alien warships. Brilliant energy bolts streaked through space toward the Eternal Horizon's engine section. Somin didn't wait for orders. Her fingers flew across her console, activating defensive systems that had never been used in 70 years of travel. Hidden ports opened across the Worldship's hull. Thousands of railguns emerged and locked onto the incoming fire. Automated targeting systems calculated trajectories in microseconds. The railguns fired, filling space with streams of metal projectiles. The alien warning shots exploded harmlessly before reaching the Worldship. Every member of the bridge crew stared at the displays in shock. The defensive grid had worked perfectly. Thelvin's angry voice demanded to know how primitives possessed such weapons. Jinwoo allowed himself a small smile. Humans had learned long ago that hope was good, but preparation was better. The Worldship had been built to survive anything. These aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. The bridge of the Eternal Horizon erupted in controlled chaos. Officers shouted updates while alarms blared warnings throughout the ship. Captain Jinwoo gripped his chair, watching the 3 alien warships on the main display. They were powering up their primary weapons, no longer firing warnings. This was about to become a real battle. Security Chief Samin worked her console with steady hands despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The defensive grid had bought them time, but those alien ships carried enough firepower to overwhelm any shield. She activated the internal communication system and spoke to the entire Worldship. All civilian personnel needed to move to designated shelter areas immediately. All defensive stations needed to report ready status. Her voice was calm, giving no hint of her fear. Down in engineering, Daeho felt the ship shudder as alien weapons struck the outer hull. The shields absorbed most of the impact, but power fluctuations rippled through every system. His team scrambled to redistribute energy, keeping the most critical systems online. One of his junior engineers pointed at the reactor display with a shaking hand. The aliens were scanning it with some kind of beam, trying to analyze how it worked. Daeho understood what the aliens wanted. The reactor was humanity's greatest achievement, built from desperation and genius. Earth's final scientists had created the fusion cascade system when their world was dying. It was the only technology powerful enough to move 12 billion people across the galaxy. Without it, the Worldship would drift dead in space. Without it, humanity would die. He made a decision that would either save them or doom them all. His fingers danced across the control panel, accessing systems that had safety locks and warning protocols. He overrode them all, initiating a controlled reactor overload. The core began building energy beyond its normal operational limits. Temperature warnings flashed red across every display. His team stared at him like he had lost his mind. Mirai's voice crackled through his communicator, asking if engineering was safe. Daeho lied and told her everything was fine. He couldn't let her know what he was doing. If this went wrong, the reactor would explode and take the entire Worldship with it. But if it worked, they might survive the next few minutes. That was all that mattered right now. The reactor hit critical mass. Daeho slammed his hand down on the emergency release. A massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from the Worldship's core, expanding outward in an invisible wave of energy. It washed over the 3 alien warships like a tsunami. Their shields flickered and died. Their weapon systems went offline. Their communication systems screamed with static and failed completely. On the bridge, Jinwoo watched the alien ships go dark. They were drifting now, their engines struggling to restart. Hyunwoo shouted that they had maybe 2 minutes before the aliens recovered. It wasn't much time, but it was a chance. Jinwoo looked at his navigation officer and asked if there was any way to get past the blockade. Hyunwoo studied his display, running calculations faster than he ever had in his life. The 3 alien ships formed a triangle pattern, blocking the most obvious escape routes. But space was 3-dimensional, not flat. If they went down in relation to the current plane of movement, they could pass under the alien formation. It would require dropping the Worldship thousands of kilometers and then pulling back up, a maneuver that would stress the hull beyond recommended limits. Junior pilot Nari spoke up from her station. She had trained for emergency maneuvers her entire career but never expected to use them. She could do it. The thrusters were designed to move the Worldship through asteroid fields and around stellar hazards. They had the power. She just needed permission to push the ship harder than it had ever been pushed before. Jinwoo gave the order. Nari's hands moved across her controls with the precision of someone who had dreamed of this moment. The massive thrusters on the Worldship's dorsal surface fired at full power. 12 billion people felt the shift as their home began to dive. Some people screamed. Others prayed. Many simply held on and trusted the crew to save them. The Eternal Horizon dropped like a stone, its enormous bulk moving with unexpected grace. The alien warships, still struggling to restore power, couldn't adjust their positions fast enough. The Worldship passed under them, so close that crew members could see the alien hull designs through the viewports. Then Nari fired the ventral thrusters, pulling them back up and away. Commander Thelvin watched from his command center as the human ship escaped. His claws scraped against his chair's armrests hard enough to leave marks. The electromagnetic pulse had been unexpected, clever and infuriating. These primitives had outsmarted him. His communications officer reported that all 3 warships were coming back online. The commander ordered immediate pursuit. He also sent a fleet-wide alert to every council ship in the sector. This was no longer a simple confiscation mission. This was war. The Eternal Horizon raced through space at maximum speed. Deho and his engineering team worked frantically to stabilize the reactor after the forced overload. Several power conduits had melted from the strain. Coolant systems were operating beyond safe parameters. They needed at least 6 hours of maintenance time they wouldn't get. He ordered his team to focus on keeping the engines running above all else. Nothing else mattered if they couldn't maintain speed. Mireille abandoned her agricultural duties and reported to an emergency shelter with thousands of other civilians. She kept her communicator close, hoping to hear from Deho. The shelter was a massive chamber deep inside the Worldship, surrounded by layers of hull plating and backup systems. Families huddled together, parents holding children who asked questions no one could really answer. Why were the aliens attacking? What did they want? Would they be safe? Jisoo moved through the shelter organizing people, making sure everyone had emergency supplies and knew the safety protocols. She had volunteered for civil defense training years ago, never thinking she would actually use it. Now she was responsible for keeping thousands of people calm while their home was under attack. She spoke with authority she didn't feel, telling everyone that Captain Jinwoo and his crew would protect them. She had to believe that was true. On the bridge, Soman reported that long-range sensors showed multiple new contacts. More alien ships were joining the chase. Hyunwoo plotted their courses and felt his heart sink. At least 10 warships were converging on their position from different vectors. The Eternal Horizon was fast for its size, but military vessels were faster. They would be caught within hours unless something changed. Tai Jin, the communications officer, picked up alien transmissions and ran them through the translator. The aliens were arguing among themselves about tactics. Some wanted to disable the Worldship's engines. Others wanted to board it directly. Commander Thelvin kept ordering everyone to follow his commands, but several alien captains were questioning his leadership. The humans had made them look like fools. Jinwoo listened to the intercepted transmissions and allowed himself a moment of hope. The aliens weren't unified. They were angry and embarrassed, which meant they might make mistakes. But hope wouldn't save his people. He needed a plan. He turned to Hyunwoo and asked about nearby stellar features, anything they could use for cover or defense. The navigation officer pulled up a star chart showing a nebula 3 hours ahead at current speed. It was dense with particulate matter and radiation, the kind of place ships normally avoided. Sensors would be nearly useless inside it. Communications would be difficult. But if they could reach it before the aliens caught them, they might be able to hide or lose their pursuers in the chaos. Jinwoo made the call. They would head for the nebula and pray it was dangerous enough to even the odds. Nari adjusted course immediately, pushing the engines as hard as Deho would allow. Behind them, the alien fleet closed in, hungry for revenge and eager to claim the prize they believed was rightfully theirs.